Hello there my fandom friends! Today I am going to be showing you how I made my Akaza cosplay. Now I made this cosplay because I love Akaza. He's my third favorite character in the entirety of the Demon Slayer story, and so I thought it would be really interesting if I made a cosplay that was half his demon form and half his human form. Now before I continue, I wanted to say that there will be no spoilers in this video unless I give a spoiler warning. So the cosplay as a whole is not spoilery, even if you have not read the future manga. Of course, we all know that demons were once human. And so with that being said, I am going to give a tutorial video of how I did this. Keep in mind that this is my first time filming alongside making a cosplay, and so if it's not as fluent as you would like, know that I'm not a professional. This is my first time trying this out. I think I did a really good job of organizing the video and explaining how I've done things. Of course, if you're trying to replicate this for one of your cosplays, or if you have any specific questions on like a part that I use or material, anything like that, feel free to ask in the comments. And so like I said before, this cosplay is my original idea. I have not seen anyone cosplay this version of Akaza. Usually people will just use demon form, which I am working on now. Currently, I will be doing his demon form sometime in the future, but this cosplay for this video is going to be kind of a collaboration of his demon and human form, which I think is really cool. If you think you could do a different part of this cosplay differently based on your own creativity skills, then totally give it a try. This is just my interpretation of what I wanted to do with this character and this cosplay. So I hope you enjoy learning about my process throughout the way. I'm going to be explaining the process from head to toe. So starting with the hair, the wig, how I styled that, how I dyed it to make it half and half down to his feet. So let's get into it. So starting at the top of the cosplay, we're going to be talking about dyeing and styling the wig. So of course, since I wanted to do the half and half look for Akaza, I kind of brutally clipped off that right side of the wig. So the right side where you can see all of the hair ties and clips, that's the part that's gonna be dyed black for his human side, and then the other side would stay pink. And so I am going to walk through my steps for exactly how I did this. And so going into this, I had never dyed a wig before, so I was mainly guessing based off of the research I had done. And so I had decided to use Rit Dye-More, which is a dye for synthetic materials. Here's a little screenshot if you wanted to pause and read the instructions, but I'm gonna go through kind of my way of doing this. So number one, I got my water to be almost close to boiling. That's what was recommended. Two, I added a teaspoon of liquid dish detergent, and that's basically gonna help that dye stick to the wig. And then I had to stir this consistently for 30 plus minutes. Now this was probably the most tedious and boring part of making this cosplay because one, I had no idea what I was doing or if it would work. And two, like, standing there for a half hour stirring water is just not fun. After waiting for it to hit almost that boil, stirring completely in that liquid soap dish detergent that you added, it is time to add the Rit Dye-More. And so I actually ended up using the entire bottle. I don't think that was recommended, but it did make my wig extra dark and I felt like it needed it, so that's what I did. And then once that's done, you take it out of the pot and you want to rinse it in warm water and then gradually get it cooler and cooler until all the dye is out. And then I just let my wig kind of dry off to the side in the kitchen for, I think it was about a day, because I didn't want to start touching it when it was still wet or dye potentially getting on my hands. As I explained all of that in this video, you can see that I was just using a synthetic safe marker for coloring in kind of like that middle crack part of the wig where I wanted it to be more defined. But you can see that the dyeing worked really well. I'm very happy, and the dye has never come out in the time that I've used it, so it's worked very well. On to styling the wig. As you can see on the left, I cut off a lot of the wig. That's just the design of the wig, and then I literally just used gel and hairspray to spike the heck out of it. Next up is creating fabric-like patterns that Akaza has on his arms, his neck. And so this is kind of the reference picture I used for this. So I basically took a stretchy blue material and cut out multiple pieces that wrapped around my arms and then around my neck. And so this was basically to help so that I wouldn't have to paint on the blue every single time I cosplayed him. So as you can see, I've added little needles to hold where I needed to sew that into place. And so here's me just adding in the little sew marks. Very small, very hard to get my fingers in there. Again, this was my first time sewing, and so I learned a ton making this cosplay. And I've never seen anyone do Akaza's blue strips like this, but it's really helpful to just put them on real quick instead of having to really finely paint them on every single time. He has so many patterns, so it's just so nice to just not waste any time and slip them on. So I ended up making 3 of those for my human side of the arm, which I'm not going to explain too much because of spoilers, and then I made 2 for my right arm for his demon form. And what you're looking at on the screen now are the 2 stripes that I wear on my neck, which I actually attached with just using those little circular Velcro. So here's a picture of me. You can see that I have on the demon side 2 of those blue straps, which are just on my arms, and then the rest is paint because I can't really stretch the fabric to go up my shoulder and then the one that went down my arm, but those paint jobs are super quick. Next up is creating the vest. And so of course I'm only creating half of the vest because I'm only doing half demon, half human. And so I just got a purple-ish shirt at Michael's and then cut it a little bit more than half. The reason why I did it a little more than half is just because I think it's better to be safe and have more fabric than not enough. And so I got rid of that one side, and then I just took a ruler and measured the side on the front that I wanted to cut off a little more. And so again, you can see that on the front of the vest, it's a lot shorter than on the back. And the reasoning for this is because when I personally put on the vest, it's the best suited for my body and probably most people, is that the shorter part will be on the front because there's less to cover than your whole back. Which I needed that whole back part to stretch to be half on my back as well so that I could connect with the other human part, which I'll get to later. So here you can just see me measuring out, making the vest shorter because of course it doesn't go all the way down to Akaza's like waist area, it's a bit higher. And so I just used the ruler to exactly cut where I needed it to fit my own body. And then you can see I'm going through cutting. This is obviously sped up very fast. Cutting took me quite a while because I was very nervous about making it straight. And so next you can see I'm going into cutting the sleeves. This also took me quite a while because the sleeve area is just so awkward to kind of pull all those bits out, and you really don't want to cut along the seam line. This whole process that I'm showing you now, I actually had to do twice. I messed up the sleeve line, I cut the seams, and I made the vest too short, just basically a bunch of problems. So as I'm showing you right now, this process was a lot quicker because I had already figured out my process, which was really nice. Something else I didn't mention before, but I put it inside out because it was a lot easier for me to cut, and so I kind of jumped back and forth. So now's the sewing bit, and so I don't want my vest to have jagged edges, and so what I did was I basically just took the edges of all of the sharp parts that I cut, and I folded it over and then sewed that straight line. And so basically what that did is made the sewing straight instead of super jagged from the uneven bits of cutting. And so as you can see here, it made it super straight, and I also used pins to help kind of guide that process. I put those in before sewing, and as you can see, I did this with all of the parts. So around the sleeve was definitely the hardest. I went super slow because it kind of curves in this crescent moon shape, which was kind of tough, and again, this was my first time sewing, but I think I did a pretty good job and I'm happy with the outcome. Next up is the patterning on the vest, which is the back part. And so for this, I actually just got some black fabric. As you can see, that little white piece of paper was me planning out exactly what I wanted the black fabric to do. And so I took a ruler, measured out the parts that I needed. And so there's kind of like an L-shaped part, and then there's just kind of like a one-shaped part. And so here you can see that I'm cutting it out. This fabric was a little stretchy, which I wish I hadn't got. After I had cut everything, I just realized it was super hard to cut and also sew, because as you're sewing, the fabric tends to stretch and then it just makes it super wacky. And then here's that L shape on the vest. Obviously it's way too long, so I had to cut it. But what I'm doing here is making those curves fold inward again so that my sharp cutting lines with the scissors aren't showing. And so that's what I'm doing. And then after I did that, I added in little needles so that would stay on the vest instead of just kind of popping off like you just saw. And so here's me cutting out the one-shaped part of his vest. Kind of looks like a one. And I only ended up doing half of what it actually looks like because, again, this was all for the demon side of the vest. The vest was honestly probably the hardest part for me. I think I probably just didn't pick the right fabric. I'd say definitely try to choose the same type of fabric for the shirt and the patterns that you're using so that it's easier to cut and sew on. I also was just super nervous about making everything straight and perfect. I'm a perfectionist, so the vest honestly caused me so much stress, but I'm very, very happy with how it turned out, and I'm really glad I took the time and effort to do it. And so, like I already explained, you can see I put in all of the pins, and then I sewed it on, and of course that's what it ended up looking like. The white part of the shirt, so this is for the human half of his body, or my part of the cosplay. And so I just basically got a white shirt off of Amazon and I cut the heck out of it. And so I literally just chopped it down the middle. I chopped off a sleeve because I only needed half. I think the hardest part for this was making this connect to the purple. I had to attach a lot of like threads and things, which I'll explain more later, but as you can see here, this is just me measuring out exactly where I wanted to cut it. And again, I did a little bit more than half just in case I didn't have enough fabric, and I was also on a time crunch and this was the only shirt I had, and so I literally could not mess up. By the way, all the fabric you see me not use in this video, I do keep for other projects, just in case I need something in the future. I like to reuse. And here you can just see that I have pinned together the human side of the shirt and the demon side of the vest. This was probably actually the scariest part because I had to sew them together. So I will explain that bit here in a second, but again, I just curled over the sharp jagged edges that I had cut, making it smooth. The needles really help, and so I'm just guiding it through the sewing machine. At this point, I was getting a very better feel for the sewing machine. It was so helpful along this whole process. And so this part was the very most scariest part because I was attaching the vest to the shirt. But as you can see, it turned out very well, and I'm so happy. Moving on to Akaza's ankle bracelets, this was actually one of the very first things I did. So here are the materials I used. This was a stretch magic string so that when I wore the bracelets, they didn't just snap. And so I didn't really show the process of me painting all of these beads. I painted gesso on them, which is basically just a white coat, and then I painted a couple layers of the paint, which I just used red acrylic paint, and then once all of that dried, I used Mod Podge lastly, and that basically just seals it all together so that it doesn't chip. And so as you can see, I put it all through the string, tied it in a bunch of knots, and there it is on my ankle. I ended up making 2 of them just in case one of them broke, but of course for this cosplay, I only needed 1 for Akaza's demon side. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the extra accessories I used throughout the cosplay that I haven't talked about so far. So first, the fangs. Obviously, I only use this on the demon side. I also use this for other demon cosplays. This is what I use for my eyebrows and around my eyes to make it look pink. And then this is the stuff that I use for my face and my arms for all the other blue that I can't cover with the fabric. And then I also really love Honey Color. It's a contact website, so that's where I got my yellow contacts. And then these shoes are just the traditional Japanese shoes. I'm not sure what they're called, but as you can tell, the right side is my demon side. You can see the blue paint. I can actually get that off, I just haven't yet. And then these are my pants that I use, which I also got on Amazon. As you can see, I've put a little tie right here, and that actually helps connect to the shirt in the front, which keeps it all together. So I'll point that out right here. I sewed that on the human side of the shirt. Basically, it just helps keep the shirt and the pants connected so that it doesn't fall apart when I'm wearing it. And then here is the belt. So what I did is I got tassels, those very bright pink tassels, and I tied them to that kind of turquoisey. And then this was the hardest part. I had to loop it around, use glue gun, ties. Honestly, I couldn't film this part because it was such a hassle, but I think it turned out awesome. We have reached the end of this tutorial video. I hope you learned something new and creative. Hopefully, if you enjoy cosplay or want to get into cosplay, or if this is your first time checking out a tutorial video, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you love Akaza as much as I do and my cosplay. I do have some pictures that I would like to share, and so this is my spoiler warning to you if you have not read the manga. I have some pictures that I'm going to show on the screen that are spoilery for the manga. I wanted to create this cosplay mainly for the reason of creating kind of spoilery content, but of course I'm always going to warn people ahead of time. I'm very excited for this content to be animated, but in the meantime, while we wait, I hope you enjoy these pictures. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!